Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Art 192, Digital Imaging / Photoshop for the spring semester 2022. Today, what I wanted to do was to give a demonstration showing you how I would approach the postcard assignment. And I'm going to deconstruct the card or the image that I have for you, and then we'll build it back up, okay? One layer by one layer. So I'm gonna go move this over here. You can move these around, you know. There we go. So this is my completed image. Now, if we take this one at a time, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can take and put together using a minimum of 4 images, a straightforward photograph like this. And the goal is to make it look seamless so you can't tell where one photograph begins and the other ends. Or here's another set of examples too that I have available for you. Let me see. Oh, I never mind. I know where it is. It's in my, there we go. So for example, here are some that were done in Photoshop. They're pretty nifty. Were found on the internet. You can see they've taken a couple of existing images and created sort of a, I don't know, Duchampian kind of piece out of it. Not Duchamp. That wouldn't be good, but maybe like a Magritte. So it'd be a surrealist approach to an illustration. So again, pretty neat. Taking a chess piece, finding a really good photograph of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. You might be able to photograph something like this yourself and then, you know, make it look like it's tipping over. Taking a swimming pool and also finding really good images of Coke cans, or again, taking a photograph yourself and making it look like it's a little pop top to a top of a Coke can or beer can or whatever. Finding an image of a bridge, turning it upside down and making it look like it's a slingshot, bow and arrow. And finding an interesting photograph of a building with a spiral staircase, and then finding another image or taking the image yourself. Now this is a bit harder because you would have to take and build the little thread or the skin of the pencil and turn it into the steps. Pretty cool though. Another one, spiral, again, staircase, all yellow, and then taking a lemon, peeling part of it, making it look like, you know, integrating the two together. Last one, taking a landscape, turning on its side, and then a finger holding a contact lens, making it turn into something like a pupil. Okay. So that would be some ideas in addition to the ones that I've shown you on my website. Okay. Now, how to take these is, let's deconstruct these one at a time. So I've added some adjust layers to make sure that they work. So if I turn off this adjustment layer, actually this one didn't do too much, but if I turn this off, you can see that the silhouette of the tree goes away. If I turn this off, the shadow of my dog goes away. Then I have a few more adjustment layers. Here's another one, because she was photographed in daylight, but with a much warmer sunlight. And if I turn that off, you can see that she fits perspective-wise, but the coloration doesn't work with the rest of the landscape. The landscape is much bluer. So we'll come back and we'll do that. See that she was in a separate photograph. that I added. I also have an adjustment layer for the horses back here with the horse people. Okay. Then if we turn that off, you can see that I had an image of some horses that I brought in. And then the very last image is our background image. So what do you do to get here? First off, you need to come up with a theme, and it doesn't have to be realistic like this. It can be a fantasy. It can be, excuse me, science fiction. Anything your imagination can come up with. But then you need, once you come upon a theme, then what you need to do is you need to find images for it. And in this particular instance, I took all of these images. These are all mine that I took with my iPhone. Okay, so how do you start this? Well, you need to first start with a blank image and make sure that it's the correct, excuse me, resolution and size. So if I look at the original image here, here's the image of some horses. Here's the image of, let's see, this is the background image. The background image that I'm using, and this is the image that I have of the silhouette of the trees. And this is the image of my dog. You can see everything is much warmer. And I put it in a cool background, so I need to change the coloration. So what I would do is I would start with a brand new image and decide how big you want it to be. Postcards are anywhere from 3x5 to 7x9, something like that. It can be 3x5, 5x7, 7x9, vertical or horizontal. It makes no difference. So now what I would do is I would create a new image. And notice that I have all the other ones open. I'm going to create a custom size here. Make sure that it is minimum 200 pixels per inch, ideally 240 to 300. So I'm going to make mine 9 inches wide, and I'm going to make it 7 inches tall, horizontal. So it will be a large image. Now I'm going to change the resolution, and I'll make it 300. Now let's just say 240. So that might work for those of you taking your own photographs. Come on now. So where did it go? It's not here. Well, let me try again. File new. I don't want that. What did I say? I just clicked close, didn't I? I probably clicked close, not create. My mistake. So again, the width 9, the height 7, resolution 240. Click create. That's what you need to see. Okay. So initially try to make the size and the resolution about what you need it to be. The next step is to find your original image, this one, and combine it with that. Don't do it the other way around, because who knows how big this is. If I go to image size here, it tells me that at 72 pixels per inch, this image is 56 by 42 pixels. If I change this to 240, it's 16 by 12. You don't want to make a huge postcard, but you do want your image to be larger than what you need so that when you shrink it down, it will hold up for printing. If you try to do it the other way, you can resample, and you can do that for the smaller parts of your image. But for the largest image, I don't recommend that you increase the scale of it unless it's minimal. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'm going to change this to 240 to make sure that it is the size that it needs to be. And then I'm going to go ahead and into my untitled document here, I'm going to use the move tool and drag it in here. So you drag it up on top of the image, and then when that image appears, drag down and hold down the shift key. Release. And now I've combined that, and you can see that it's much larger than it needs to be. That's a good thing. So now what I can do is I can hit Command T to transform this image. Command T. Come on. Where are you? Let's go back up again and let's go to Edit. Nope, everything is grayed out. So something is amiss here. Okay, maybe let's try again. Command T. Command T. Well, it's not showing up. So let me zoom out. It's quite possible that my image is so large, I'm not seeing the crop areas. So I'm going to zoom out, and I was right. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to shrink it down from the middle and make sure that I don't distort the image. If you click on one of these handles like so, you're not careful, you will distort the image. Same if you hold them by the corner and you move it around, you're going to distort the image unless you hold down the shift key and the option key. Now it shrinks it down from the middle. So I want to make sure that I have just about all of the image that I possibly can. Okay. So I'm going to leave myself a little bit of wiggle room here, and I'm going to click OK. So now I have the background, the foundation for my illustration. The next thing is that you can bring the other images in as you wish. You can start with the background and come forward, or it can be in any order really. And just get the basic image in there. And then you're going to have to come back and make sure that the lighting matches. You're going to have to work with adjustment layers to make sure that the coloration works and that sort of thing. So what I'll do next is let's pick, I don't want that one just yet. I don't want that one. I want this one. Okay. So this is entirely, this is one image here, but I just want to take the branches from here, and that's it. So what I can do is we can try to use a tool that's available to us. It's under the quick selection tool, and it will be the object selection tool. So what I want to do, making sure that the image that I have selected is there. I don't like working on the background image, so I always make a copy of it first. And I'm going to go ahead and click and drag around that image and see if I can, get a good chunk of it. Now, this may need some work, maybe not. I don't know. And you can see that it's done a pretty good job here. So we'll find out more in a minute when I actually go ahead and I take that selection, and I'm going to move that selection to our untitled image. Come on. No. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. So let's go ahead and I'm going to take that selection and hit Command J and put it on another layer. So you can see what I've done here. Now, I was careful in that I'm using a nice blue background, so I didn't have to get into the little nooks and crannies of this. And now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and using the move tool, I'll click and I'll drag just as I did with the other image. And when it comes over here, I'm going to hold it down and just release. Okay. much too big, and you can see part of that sky. It doesn't match it at all. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command T to transform again to get it to the right size. Maybe something like this. And now what I want to do is I want to play with some mode settings to see if I can't eliminate the background without having to do much work. So the next thing that I'll do is I'm going to go from a normal layer, and I'm going to go through each one of these and these modes, and we can see if it does anything. And that's the one that works for us. I'm going to select darken because all I want to do is I want to have the dark tones visible and the light tones, which is that background sky, go away. They're much lighter. Okay. So we can move this over a little bit. Now I have another part. The next thing that I want to do is I'm going to bring in my dog, Bagel, and I've already done some preliminary work for her. So if we look here, let's look at the finished version of her now. Well, not that one. I added some color effects. So this is not what the original version looked like. In fact, if we look at the original version, we go back all the way back to the original. Let's turn these off. And let's zoom out so you can see what I have. You can see that I had to make up part of the left here. I had a lot of coloration in her to change. I also had to make sure that the image was straightened and everything. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go ahead and bring back my original image here. Or actually, let me just bring up, let's scroll up here. So using the different selection tools, that's what we're going to focus on Wednesday, as well as next week. I made a selection of her to isolate her from the background. And I made sure that I included the shadow. Okay. So to do that, when all is said and done, I can go ahead and I'll turn this layer on, and I can turn the other one off, because this is the one that I want. Okay, so let's make sure that I have the other layers turned off. This is the one that I want. I don't want that one. There we go. So I'm left here with just the shadow, and I'm left with an image of her. And you want to make sure that, notice that I've used the quick selection tool, and I've made some adjustments to save the soft little frizzy feathers of her tail and her undercoat here, the underside of her. And so doesn't look like it was cut out with a pair of scissors. And once I have this selected, again, this is pretty much lesson 3 and 6 that you need to do in order to get a pretty good handle. Lesson 6, really, to be able to do something, make a selection like this. And then what I can do is just as what I had done before, is I can click and drag, go up to the untitled image and bring it in. And you can see she's just way too big. So I'm going to shrink it down, and then I have to place her and try to match the perspective. So to place her, first I need to reduce her down a little bit. So I'm going to hold down the Shift and Option key, like so. I'm going to move her in place like so. Okay, now I can leave her facing that way. But again, there's some coloration that needs to be done, or I can have her facing the other way. And you can see that the shadow and everything matches the perspective pretty well. If I want her facing the other way, then with this image selected, let me go ahead and check OK. But with this layer selected, what I can do is let's zoom in here a little bit. It actually looks pretty good facing that way. But what I can do is I can go to edit, and I can go to, where am I going to go? I'm going to go to transform, and down at the bottom, it says flip horizontal. So now she's facing to the right. I thought maybe with the tree branches coming in from the right, she should face to the right. So we have a nice balance between the two. Okay. Now I thought in the background, something that would be useful to fill up this area back here, which is kind of dead space, is that I had a photograph of some people on horses. And where did they go? They're here. So let me zoom out. And you can see that I'm going to copy this layer and show you the image that I had. But this is isolating all of these people from the other image that I had. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the layer first. And I like working in a non-destructive way. So what I did to be able to bring any of the image back or to make edits to it is that I made sure that I made a clipping mask. So I'm going to go ahead and select the layer and hit Command J, make a copy of it so I can always go back to that if I want. I'll turn that off, and I'm going to go ahead and delete the mask. And when I do, I don't want to apply it. I'm just going to delete the mask, and you can see the image that I got it from. Okay, so how did I select these guys? Again, I went back to the object selection tool, and I dragged around them just to see if I could get, as a way of getting started. Okay, so it's going through and doing its thing. And it's pretty good, but it's not perfect. You'll notice that some of the legs have not been selected. So what I need to do is I need to zoom in and see what hasn't been selected. And now what I can do is I can switch from the object selection tool, the quick selection tool, and I can just click and drag inside here to make sure that all of the legs are a part of that selection. I'm not too worried about the hole back here, but I could go back and erase it. I want to make sure also that the shadows are selected. And I'll do the same thing over here. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that the pants are selected, and pants are selected. Now, there might be some other touch up for me to do. That's something that you're going to want to take your time, make sure that everything is working okay. And there's some areas here. I guess I'll remove some of this. So if I hold down the Option or Alt key, I can get rid of some of that selection. It's catching up on the progress now. If I want to get rid of the space between the legs, I can reduce the size of my tool, and I can go back in and I can remove those, but I'm not going to worry about that because they're in the distance. Now, if I can see that there's a problem with it, then I will go back in and make changes. And once I get a good selection of these guys, then what I can do is I can click down here in layers, make sure that that layer is selected, and I can select the clipping mask tool, or add layer mask, which is basically a clipping mask. Okay, and that removes all the background. And again, I'll proceed as I did before in moving it over to my start image. And you can see that they're a little bit fuzzy, a little bit blurry. That's because they're in the distance. So it's not going to be a big deal. We're not going to bring them in this size. We're going to bring them in very small. So again, using the move tool, I'm going to go ahead and click and drag up to my start. When it switches over, I'm going to hold down and drag down here. You can see that they're just way too big. I want them in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command T or Control T. And you can see that it's much, much too big. So I'll hold down the Shift and the Option key to make it much smaller. They just need to be little tiny things in the back here. I'll move them over like so. So now I have, that looks pretty good. If I need to change it, and notice that all of my images have been large enough that I haven't had to enlarge them. I've just had to reduce them, and that's what you want. Okay. Now, are they in the right size, the right perspective? I don't know. If it looks right, it's right. So I have one image, which is my background. I have second image is the silhouette of the tree. The third image is my dog, and the fourth image are the horse equestrians here. So the next step is to go back in here and to make sure that each of these elements matches the background image. So I'm going to take you back to the other finished one that I had. Let's see if I have it here. I don't want history. I want, I don't remember which one it is. Not that one, not that one. Should have been, maybe I didn't save it as a Photoshop file yet. Oh, no, it's this one. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn the layers back on. And we can see that this guy doesn't need any work. I'm going to go ahead and select my dog, and the perspective sort of works, but I'll really know the difference when I turn on the shadow. And that looks pretty good. It looks like it matches. It's tilting forward. But again, her coat is much warmer than the background. The background is much bluer. So there's two things that I can do. I can darken her up, number one, because the sun is behind her. So for those of you who have had, for example, a drawing class or painting class, and you've had to actually draw from life, these sorts of questions that you'll ask yourself about, you know, what's working and what isn't will help you. Because now I know, okay, I'm going to start by changing the lightness and darkness of that. To do that, I happen to use the levels tool, okay? And I did this by hand, and you can see that because the sun is behind her, she would be much darker. But then if you look at her coat, it's much, much too red. So because it should be affected by the bluish tones in the photograph, I added a color balance layer. And I took some of that. If I go back here and I reset this, remember, this is what it was. And now I'm going to go ahead and undo what I just did. And I can bring it back. So I've added a lot of blue. I pushed up here in the midtones. I pushed from the red to more of the cyan. And I added from the blues a little, or the yellows a little bit, pushed it more towards the blue side to get her a little bit more bluish tones. That would be something that you would see if she was really in the photograph. Now, I separated the shadow from her. And if I look at the shadow up here, the reason I did that is so that I could come back here and I could adjust the opacity. Now, that's just way too dark. That's at 100%. But if I tone it back, and I made it about 30, 35%, then that looks much better. It looks more realistic. You're allowing some of the the bluish brown tones from the underneath to come through. Now I could probably soften the shadow a little bit around the edges. That might be one of the things that I should do. But let's go back and let's see some other stuff that we have here. Let's go down, and where else? We're going to go ahead and I'm going to turn those guys back on. And then again, I used a levels just to darken everything. So if I select levels here, you can see that if I click this button to go back to the original settings, that might work, but I thought it would be better if, because they are in the distance, that they were really, and the sun was still behind them, that they would look better darkened. So I went ahead here and I pushed the darks a little bit. And the same with the midtones until I got something that I thought fit. Now, their colors might be a little bit too off, and I might want to change color balance for them too. But for right now, for our demonstration purposes, I'm good. Now, before I add the type, do you have any questions for me? Now, I had a lot of really good images, or I think they were pretty good images. They're sharp, focused, they're large, high resolution, images that I could work with, that I could take pieces from and combine them into a single element. Okay. Now, for those of you who want to do the a variation on this assignment and do the selfie photo bomb, that would be an option for you too. Again, there are samples on my website that we can take a look at. And then when I show you, after I show you those, we'll go ahead and I'll add some type to this and we'll call it a day. Okay. So I'm going to come down here, my website, and I'll go to Kirk's classes. And let's go ahead and scroll up. Trying to find the ones that will work. So again, this doesn't require 4 images, it just requires 2. But what it does is it tests your ability to isolate images and to be able to, he had to isolate George Bush and the rabbit from the background. He had to isolate himself from a photograph, and the photograph he took himself. And he had to make sure that the lighting was very similar to the one with George Bush, since that was the principal image. Okay, then he probably had to resize the image, and then he put it behind. Okay, he may have had some coloration, some, like as I did, he may have had to make some color adjustments to make sure that the skin tones match. Another good one here by Sarah is taken from Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock. And she put herself, photographed herself and put herself inside the coffin, going through the same techniques we did before. So it's just one image in the background and one image of herself. So instead of 4 images, they're just 2. But this is much more, in some respects, this is more difficult than the other example that I just demonstrated, is because you have to make sure that the lighting matches and that you come back and you get a pretty close approximation of the skin tone colors. So they all look like they're part of the same photograph. This was another one that Brandon did. Okay. Staring at the sun. And that's it on those. So those are the only examples that I have. This is more of a traditional approach, black and white, what I'm showing you right now. And this is again, a satisfactory, more than satisfactory solution to it. So different approaches. Well, I said the last thing to do would be to add some type. So let's do that and we'll call it a day, unless you have any questions for me. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and let's select the type tool. And a little sluggish here. That's the way it goes. There we go. So I'm going to make sure that it's flush left. I could do it centered. It really doesn't matter. And I'm just going to type. Doesn't matter where I go. I want to make it sure though that I'm on the top layer so that when I begin typing, it's above everything else. So I'll go ahead and click. And I'm going to put Bagel. It's the dog's name. Come on, Bagel. And I'm going to go down here at the beach. Now, this is just one approach. I would probably want to do something a little bit different with this, a little bit, since it's sort of a fun piece, make it fun. Now I could pick colors from here instead of using the color this that I had already on my screen that I'd used from before, is that maybe there's a blue or there's a red in here or a brown or something that would work better. It's already in the photograph. So I can click in here. Okay. Then I can come over my photograph and maybe I should try the red. Okay. And see if that works. So let's go ahead and click that. And I need to highlight the type first. I blew it. So let me go ahead and with the type selected, I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of it so that I can change the color of it. And now let's go ahead and click again. Move over my photograph and click. And it should change it. There we go. That doesn't working. That isn't working. Not like that. Maybe a brownish color. Maybe a sand color. No, I want something lighter. It reads nicely against the blue background. So maybe this is a kind of a nice warm gray. I can make this even a little bit lighter. So I use this gray back here. And I can always add a drop shadow, something like that. That's not bad. So I'll go with that. Then one of the things that I can do is that I could probably change the type for Bagel. I can also change the size. So while I'm doing that, let's go ahead and increase the size a little bit. I'm going to use the spinner here, make it a little bit larger, maybe a lot larger until it gets to the same width as at the beach. Okay, now let's try some different fonts. This is Myriad Pro. So let's click in here and see what some others look like. I'm going to go from, I'm not going to change that from there. I'm going to change it from over here. So if I click here under my, because I want to see the preview. And you can see that as I roll over these, I'm seeing what it's going to look like without having to commit. You know, I don't know. I'll do something here. kind of like one of the first ones that I saw here. I like the Caslon. So I'm going to select it. I don't know if this would be my final choice. It's not wide enough. It's, but I'll go ahead and I'll commit to it. But it still has, it reads, but not as well as it could. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to layer effects down here. And let's go ahead and add a drop shadow. Now that's just way, way, way too much. Move that over there. And I'm going to change the size of it. I'm going to change the spread. And let's make the distance, make it so it's coming from the same angle as the sun. The opacity could be a little bit darker. Okay, and I click. And for today's demonstration, I think I got it. That's what I'm going to use. I probably could have, separated at the and made them a little bit smaller and emphasized the word beach. But, for just a quick demonstration, this isn't a bad solution. Okay, so experiment with different fonts, with different families of type, different weights, you name it, and try configuring your text in different ways. Notice that, I wanted to emphasize the word bagel, and I her day at the beach. And then I went ahead and just increased the size of her type and made at the beach smaller so that it worked. And it's okay if some of the type overlaps, it's not a big deal. If it enhances the design, then we're set to go. And there's my postcard. Okay, it's a large one. I can go ahead and I could change the size of everything right now if I wanted to. Since I made it a large postcard, I could go ahead and make it a small one. I can go back to image. I'm going to go to image size. And instead of 9x6, I want it 300. I'm going to make it 7. It's 7x5. Or I could use the crop tool, but it's close enough. I'm going to go ahead and click OK and leave it. No, it's a little bit higher resolution, but that's okay. So now it's basically a 5x7 postcard. And the other way of doing that would be use the crop tool if I didn't mind cropping any of it out. So I hope that this helps you guys today. Is a way to take a variety of images and put them together and to create one single image from those and hopefully do it in a way that looks pretty believable. And I put this together very quickly, so I would want to go back and go over everything pretty carefully and make sure that the shadow works, to make sure that our coloration works. Do I want the tree branch up here? Maybe there's something else that I could put instead. And I could pretty much almost have these equestrian riders in silhouette almost. Because if you look at the back of this rock, it's almost in silhouette. So you can always, by using the adjustment layers, let's go back to the equestrians right here. And let's select here. I can go ahead and I could probably even make this a little bit darker. And let's take the lights and midtones and make those a little bit darker too. So you have a few little highlights and it's kind of matches the rock that we see here. So that might even be a better solution. Okay. So that's what I have in mind. There's a bunch of different ways that you can go. It can be surreal. You can do the selfie photobomb approach, or you can do this kind of traditional postcard, you know, wish you were here, or go to the beach with my dog all the time. I have tons of photographs of the beach, tons of photographs of her, you know, equestrian riders, all kinds of stuff. I could put her in a sunset. I could do any variety of things. Okay. So if there aren't any questions, we are about done for today. No questions? Yes, you can do either the selfie photobomb or the postcard. It doesn't really matter. I don't have a handout per se for the selfie photobomb because in the past I've always given the assignment verbally in class and shown examples like I've shown you, and it's pretty straightforward. But you have to find a high resolution image of a famous person or a famous situation or something. Maybe it doesn't have to be famous, but you just have to insert yourself into that image and you want it to look seamless. So you need an image that's high quality, high resolution, sharp focus that you can use for your background. And then you'll have to take a photograph of yourself matching the same lighting, try to get the same coloration as you can. And again, make it as large as you can so that you can shrink it down. And then when you're done, depending on the kind of photograph that you create, there's some tonal adjustments that you'll have to make. There's probably some color adjustments. You may also have to change the texture a little bit, because if you're trying to match yourself to an old photograph, then you may have to make your face more grainy to match an old photograph that adds a lot of grain to it. And one of the things that you can do for that is there is a filter up here. You can add noise. So that's what that would do, add noise. Okay, we're clear on everything? You're coming along with the lessons. This Wednesday, I'll probably show you different ways of selecting images, and maybe continue with that into next week. We'll see. So that you can isolate the images to be able to combine them together. Okay. We good? Okay. Okay, that's it. You guys are free to leave. I'm going to pause the recording, and I'll see everybody Wednesday. And again, if you need to be in touch with me, just email me, and we can always set up an individual one-on-one webinar if you need help or you want feedback on your projects or your lessons. Okay. And don't forget, I think all of you here already have Google Drive. So, but for those people who watch this later that have not given me their email, please do so I can add you to our Google shared Google Drive folder. Okie doke. Bye-bye.